We're going to go over the post game in just a minute, where we have some fun Crowder stuff. Before we get there, Matt, I want to talk to you a little bit about this Red Lobster story.
Yeah, so I'll just give you my sort of overview of it, not having done the deep dive. But at first, it looked like okay, Red Lobster not doing well, and there's been scapegoated people who took advantage of their shrimp deal, and then yeah, so I saw. I'll just leave it there without getting into my other things because I take it that that's not the full. It wasn't just Americans love a deal too much.
It's so good. This is such a great story because it really does just fit a certain kind of narrative. Just headline: Red Lobster's filed for bankruptcy. That doesn't necessarily mean all going away, but a lot of people showed up to work and the doors were locked. And we'll talk about what that means for folks. But yeah, no, there's been a lot of talk about Red Lobster and particularly shrimp. And the thing is that one of the kind of easy answers for this has been Red Lobster's endless shrimp um, promotion, which they used to do just a few times a year, and they made it permanent. And people were like, "Oh well, people just ate too much shrimp in it and bankrupted the company." But again, it's one of those things that's always amazing when folks say this kind of thing because it's like, have we lost our American dynamism? Um, we've been loving shrimp forever, as this Red Lobster commercial from the '80s attests to.
We, we know, we know how, we know how you love shrimp. A great deal of shrimp. Whoa, what a deal.
The worry that Red Lobster basically learned the hard way that Americans love a good deal and shrimp is just frankly ludicrous. Don't get me wrong. The endless shrimp promotion that they did cause them a lot of trouble, but it's a little bit more actually interesting than just a bad pitch by somebody.
Yeah, and I must say, I did see some nasty stuff about people bringing large families and letting more than one person eat on the unlimited shrimp thing that I thought was a little bit,
Ooh.
I mean, we already talked about Daniel Perry, so I don't want to go deep into that, but coming from a pretty negative place, yeah.
If we get into this culture stuff, Matt, we'll never go forward. But like anytime something like this happens, right wingers love to do this kind of like the nasty mob, right? But I'll tell you another group that loves to do this shit is like comfy liberals. Oh, I never eat at a place like Red Lobster. I prefer to go to my like special restaurant that's very nice and fancy. It's a very nasty kind of hatred of like the people. Look, Red Lobster
Right.
is a part of the the American culture. It's a part of the American experience. We'll put it that. I'm not saying it's necessarily, the embodiment of all that we want to see and be. But there is this kind of really nasty hatred of like the plebs that happens anytime a story like this breaks.
Oh yeah, very much so. And I was having this conversation with someone else. Like, places like Olive Garden or Red Lobster were sort of like the celebration destinations growing up, and that's not maybe relatable to like fancier people, but that was like, oh crap, you like graduated. Let's go out to one of these places, and they become a part of the community. There's this woman who wrote a review of Olive Garden when it expanded to Grand Forks, North Dakota, and everyone made fun of it because it's like somebody getting really excited about an Olive Garden coming to town, but we didn't have one in town
Mm.
before, and now we got one. And yeah, that's where you celebrate with your closest loved ones, very regularly.
And I think people should definitely read this full story here in Business Insider: "The Fishy Death of Red Lobster" by Emily Stewart, and we'll quote a couple times from here. But again, this kind of hyperfixation on the all-you-can-eat shrimp thing really does cover up a lot of issues. Quoting from the piece here, while Red Lobster increased traffic somewhat, we're talking about the promotion. People coming in to chow down on all you can eat shrimp was a money bleeder. The company blamed Endless Shrimp for its $11 million losses in the third quarter of 2023. And the fourth quarter, the picture got even worse, with the restaurant chain seeing $12.5 million in operating losses. So the shrimp was a problem, but it is not what ended up sinking Red Lobster. To get that, we have to sort of zoom back a little bit, and we're about to meet a very familiar character in these stories of beloved American icons. getting eaten up. That's called private equity. But back in 20,
Oh, the guys who come in and make sure businesses run really well and
ooh,
everyone and serve the community.
you're about to hear some big brain business here. Um, so in 2014, Red Lobster is sold to a private equity firm called Golden Gate Capital, and they brought in these fancy folks who came up with a lot of great ideas to really energize the Red Lobster portfolio. One of those was selling all the dirt underneath the Red Lobster restaurants to another company, so that the private equity firm, which bought the company for 2.1 billion from Darden Group, um, could recoup their losses. And this is what always happens with these private equity firms. They get a bunch of debt to purchase the company, and then they have a lot of debt that they got to pay. So they bleed the company dry to make sure that they're taken care of. And then look, they're fine. They've made money on the process. These companies and the people who work for them, not so much. So they sell the land underneath all these Red Lobsters all across the United States, and they start leasing the restaurants, meaning that all these restaurants now have to pay rent on top of the other expenses like food sourcing, wages, etc.
Leverage buyouts, just to drive that home. It's like if somebody came in and said, "Hey, Matt, I'll give you $75,000 to have your place on Left Reckoning." I'll be like, nice, bet. Come on in, you're in here. And all of a sudden, that person comes in and say, "Hey, David, we need to make $75,000 plus dollars because I just gave it to Matt to get myself in here." And it's just like a regular part of this is again how Toys R Us famously
Mhm.
went under too. And it's also like if I'm like, "Hey, David. Also, by the way, there's a new expense coming out of the Left Reckoning pocketbook for rent, and the
Yeah.
rent is the studio here.
This new
You have to
company
pay
that I
me."
made up, right? This new company that I made up, you owe me rent. Um, it's truly amazing. And look, if it was just you could maybe even just stop this story there, but it doesn't even get to the fullness of just like the epitome of American financial capitalism. Because what happens next is okay. So they're now sort of screwing the company over. Red Lobster is a brand that's sort of on the decline. It's not as Don Trump would say a hot food restaurant anymore. Um, so they're in a little bit of trouble, and this private equity firm brings in a new group called Thai Union, which is a Thailand based seafood company, and they bring them in for $575 million. And let me just pull up this from this piece because truly what we're about to get here is something else because there is so many hands in this pot at this time. What we're watching happen right now with Red Lobster, it becomes a little hard to follow. So I'm just going to read this directly from this Business Insider piece. After the real estate move, Golden Gate sold 25% of the company in 2016 to Thai Union, a Thailand seafood company, for $575 million, and unloaded the rest of the company to an investor group called the Seafood Alliance, of
They
which
sound like superheroes.
of which Thai Union was a part of in 2020, right? It's a lot of hands in the pot now. Golden Gate likely came out ahead. Same can't be said for Thai Union, which also controls the Chicken of the Sea brand. A Chicken of the Sea
Oh,
for our younger
Jessica Simpson.
audience is a company um, that was made famous by Texan Jessica Simpson back in the 2000s for this bit right here.
Is this chicken what I have or is this fish? I know it's tuna, but it says chicken by the sea. That's stupid.
Uh, Honestly, I will say after watching that again,
I love his outfit too because that is how I was dressing in the mid 2000s.
oh
Just
yeah,
like this sleeveless
Nick Lachey,
college
right?
bas-. Yeah.
Anyway, interesting time, the mid 2000s,
The
but
Iraq War.
oh shit, the Iraq War waging. So anyway, so Thai Union is getting into all this kind of stuff. They own the Chicken of the Sea. They're also basically like a seafood company. And this is where things get really wild here. Um, in 2021, Red Lobster refinanced its debt with one of its new lenders being Fortress Investment Group, an investment management group and private equity firm. According to Bloomberg, it's one of the key lenders involved in the net debt negotiations. Now, look, we don't have the time nor the patience to untangle this entire web here. But basically, I just want people to know in 2014, the company gets taken over by a private equity firm, which then involves all of these different figures. And it causes a lot of problems for this beloved American institution. In recent years, the company has been just running through CEOs because everyone, I guess, gets to take the helm, looks around, it's like, oh shit, I got to abandon ship. And there's effectively no leadership in the company. And as people have said in this Business Insider piece and a lot of business analysts time and time again, the commitment, giving people an endless shrimp deal, right? Which again did lose money, is not really just like a bad idea. It was a desperate Hail Mary hope that maybe this would reinvigorate the company.
Right.
Funniest thing, and in doing research for this story, Matt, I was able to discover a new news source, which I will be following. Seafoodsource.com noted Red Lobster files for bankruptcy, says investigating Thai Union's undue influence in shrimp purchasing decisions. Because if it wasn't bad enough, all this other stuff that we were talking about here, one of the problems was that one of the now ousted, and I'm sorry, I have not paid for the membership at Seafood Source, but we got them right here. One of the now ousted CEOs of Red Lobster was apparently coordinating with Thai Union under the guise of a quote quality review. They made a series of decisions that eliminated the company's breaded shrimp suppliers, leaving Thai Union, right, the company that has a lot of influence over the company, with an exclusive deal that led to higher costs for Red Lobster. So again, going back to the original claim that it was the endless shrimp deal that undid Red Lobster. It's a bit more complicated. We have the story of private equity getting involved, doing a boneheaded move to basically literally take the ground underneath the company away. And then the new wonderful leaders from Thailand came up with an exclusive, bizarre, and extremely lucrative for their company deal to be the exclusive supplier of shrimp to Red Lobster, a cost to the Red Lobster Corporation that ended up costing them so much money, they've now filed for bankruptcy.
I can't get over the idea that Red Lobster is investigating something like a competitor. They're all of a sudden like private eyes in addition to a business that's going under.
Well, truly, I mean, and if I were more interested and involved, I would be curious to see how important these shrimp contracts were for Thai Union, because that is, sorry, not to be, not to do a pun, but like it's fishy.
Oh, wow. I mean, the government should have the authority to like go look into this. Like, it shouldn't be on Red Lobster. It should be like we've hired some private detective, some gumshoes to try to work on the case. Like, this should be very easy to actually look into. But it's like it's so incestuous. Like Thai Union buying the Harvest Alliance, like all these different like groups of like just parasites, just people that their entire life isn't like actually putting in work. It's how can we set up some sort of system where the money flows right into my pockets more directly?
And I'll tell you this is that did any of this create like real serious innovation in seafood? No, like the technology that we needed existed in the 80s to meet America's shrimp fix. Now, look, we're having a little bit of fun here, but this is serious. I mean, a lot of people lost their jobs all across the country. And this brings us back, I think, to the most important point here. It's ridiculous when you look under the hood of American capitalism and you see all of these bizarre maneuvers and techniques being used by private equity firms, by vultures and vampires to try to squeeze every last bit of profit out of all these companies. And while all those people get their money and are fine, take care of themselves, moving on to the next project, moving on to the next thing that they're going to strangle and destroy, it's thousands of American workers who are left in a difficult situation. And this is a local news report from Denver. And I just find what this woman says in this clip to just be an incredible embodiment of the unfairness of our system because a bunch of jackasses in San Francisco screwed over the company by selling the ground underneath it. Some weird Thai companies started creating, I don't know, seemingly, I don't know for sure, but seemingly corrupt breaded shrimp deals with Red Lobster. And the consequence is this woman and lots of other people lose their job. So let's just play this right here.
Boguski didn't find out until about 2 hours before her shift on Monday when her phone was lighting up with texts.
I thought somebody died. And so I panicked and I'm like, what's happening?
When she checked her schedule, she says there was no longer anything there. Her job as a server was gone without any notice from the company. She says everyone from servers to managers couldn't believe it.
Nobody acted like they knew anything. Like if they did, nobody knew.
In a statement from the Colorado Restaurant Association, President Sonia Riggs says restaurants across the state are facing labor shortages, unprecedented inflation, high interest rates, and increased regulations, saying that this year we're seeing local restaurants close every week. Boguski, now a victim of one of those closures, just wishes she and her co-workers had more notice.
You can literally open your eyes, go about your, wait one morning, go about your day, check your phone, and then your entire livelihood is gone. And that was someone else's decision. And that's terrifying.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly
Damn.
the point. Is that,
Yeah.
you know, they something that massively affects your life. You don't have control over that. Hell, let alone control over it. Just fair warning or notice about it.
You don't know that your boss's boss has decided to literally rent the ground from under you to another shell company. And all of a sudden you don't have a place to like go get money to pay your goddamn rent at the end of the day. I mean, it really is, you know, it's a brutal display of this system.
Which is inherently anti-democratic and absurd that the people who get taken care of first are the dumbasses who sunk this company into the ground.
Seafood Alliance or whoever the fuck. All these companies.
Those are the ones who get taken care of, and the actual people whose work or what create, you know, the value at these companies are the ones who get a text.
Who sweat in the kitchen, who clean the bathrooms, who like clean up your goddamn food you mushed into the carpet. No, it's these guys at the Seafood Alliance, and they get people in suits being like, "Hey, you know how we could?" I mean, it is so despicable.
And in a rational and just system, as long as folks wanted to continue to eat Red Lobster or seafood, what would happen in a situation like this would be that those people who create that business would be able to take it over, continue serving the community, continue maintaining their jobs. But instead, we just have destruction and suffering for no reason, but just make sure that that number goes up for the folks at the top.
Yeah. I mean, under that system, you know, look, if each individual workplace decides, hey, maybe we should rent out the ground from under our feet to a shell company, they could do that on a worker run restaurant by worker run restaurant. You wouldn't have some goddamn egghead being like, I think this is a good idea, and bankrupting the whole country, the whole company.
Well, folks, that is Left Reckoning 170. Show's not over, though. Matt and I are going to jump right over to the post game. You can get access to that at patreon.com/Left Reckoning. A lot of really exciting stuff, including the post game, but also our bonus episodes. We had a really great conversation with Nick Bolin over the weekend, talking about Big Sky, Montana, which is another kind of example of these bizarre companies that are taking over things that should belong to the people. In this case, how a bunch of billionaires are basically creating their own little fiefdoms out in Montana. So you won't want to miss that. You get access to that patreon.com/Left Reckoning and help support the program.
See you, folks. Oh, also Steven Crowder talking about the ICC being gay. Interesting theme, a through line in Steven Crowder's coverage from his very first video, it turns out. But anyway, see you in a few minutes over the postgame. Patreon.com/Left Reckoning. Come on, folks. We want you to join. Come on.
There we go.
Hey, come on. Come join us over here, Jack. See you in a little bit.